She became his confidant, his friend, his lover, all to lure Israel's biggest nuclear whistleblower into a trap. This is the true story of Cheryl Bentov, the Mossad Honeytrap agent who used trust itself to silence Mordechai Vanunu and protect Israel's deadliest secret. In 1986, one man threatened to expose Israel's hidden nuclear arsenal to the world. Mossad sent a single woman to stop him, with no violence, no guns, just connection. September 27, 1986, Leicester Square, London. The autumn rain drizzles softly over the bustling square, turning the pavement slick and the neon lights into blurred halos. Cheryl Bentov, 26, blonde hair tucked under a stylish beret, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket that screams American tourist, lingers outside a newsstand, flipping through a magazine she has no intention of buying. Her eyes, hidden behind oversized sunglasses despite the gray sky, scan the crowd with practiced casualness. She's been in London for weeks now, blending into the flow of backpackers and shoppers, waiting for the moment that feels right. Then she sees him, Mordechai Vanunu, the Israeli nuclear technician who's been making waves with his claims to journalists. He's alone, looking lost in the crowd, carrying a plastic bag from a nearby pharmacy. Psych profiles from Tel Aviv paint him clearly. Brilliant but isolated, disillusioned with Israel's secrets, craving connection after months of hiding his bombshell revelations. Lonely men are predictable, her handlers had said. And Cheryl knows how to be the answer to that loneliness. She times it perfectly, stepping backward as if distracted, bumping gently into him. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she exclaims in a bright Florida accent, hand flying to her mouth in exaggerated embarrassment. Vanunu turns, startled, but his eyes soften immediately at the sight of her. Pretty, apologetic, American. "No problem at all," he mutters in accented English, a faint smile breaking through his guarded expression. "Cindy," she introduces herself, extending a hand. "From Orlando, just here sightseeing, getting completely lost, as usual." He chuckles, introduces himself as Mordechai, mentions he's from Israel but traveling. They chat briefly about the weather, the crowds, the best place for coffee. Cheryl laughs at his dry jokes, touches his arm lightly when emphasizing a point, the small gestures that build instant rapport. Within minutes, he's offering to show her a quieter cafe nearby. She accepts with enthusiastic gratitude, as if he's done her a huge favor. As they walk together through the drizzle, Cheryl feels the familiar rush, the thrill of the hook setting in. Vanunu is talking freely now, relaxing in her company, the weight of his secrets perhaps feeling a little lighter with this charming stranger. But inside, Cheryl's mind is ice-cold focused. This is no chance encounter. Mossad has been tracking him since his leaks to the Sunday Times threatened to expose Israel's nuclear program at Dimona, a program the world officially denies exists. The global context is explosive. It's 1986, the Cold War still simmering, the Middle East a powder keg after the Lebanon invasion, and ongoing Palestinian intifada stirrings. Israel's nuclear ambiguity is its ultimate deterrent. Underground reactors, unspoken arsenals keeping enemies at bay. Vanunu, a mid-level technician turned whistleblower, has photographs, diagrams, proof that could shatter that ambiguity. Invite preemptive strikes or international sanctions. Prime Minister Shimon Peres, in a fragile national unity government with Yitzhak Shamir, demands silence. Mossad Director Nahum Admoni authorizes the operation, lure Vanunu off British soil, where a direct grab risks diplomatic catastrophe with Thatcher's government. Cheryl, born Cheryl Haneen in Orlando, raised Jewish American. Aliyah at 18, IDF service then Mossad recruitment in her early 20s, is the perfect tool. Married to an intelligence officer, trained in seduction tradecraft but drawing the line at full intimacy, Mossad's unspoken rule for its women. She's deployed as Cindy, the bubbly tourist seeking adventure. Her mission, gain his trust, isolate him, draw him to neutral ground for extraction. Over coffee in a quiet Soho cafe, Vanunu opens up more, complaining about Israeli bureaucracy, hinting at his frustrations without revealing too much yet. Cheryl listens wide-eyed, sharing fabricated stories of her boring life back home, her recent breakup, her spontaneous trip to Europe for excitement, She mirrors his discontent subtly, planting seeds of shared understanding. By the end of the hour, he's suggesting they meet again tomorrow, perhaps a movie or dinner. She agrees eagerly, exchanging hotel details. As they part in the rain, Vanunu watches her go with a spark of interest she recognizes all too well. The trust is beginning to form, fragile but growing. Back in her modest hotel room that evening, Cheryl transmits a burst message via hidden radio. Contact established, target responsive. Positive trajectory. Tel Aviv replies with cautious approval. Cultivate slowly, avoid pressure. But the emotional stakes gnaw at her in the quiet hours. Vanunu is a traitor, yes, risking Israel's survival for his conscience. Yet he's also a man, vulnerable, seeking validation in her fabricated warmth. The human cost of the game, using connection as currency, building something real enough to destroy a life. Cheryl stares at the ceiling, remembering her own Aliyah dreams, the pride in serving a nation born from ashes. Trust is her weapon, sharper than any blade, because it cuts both ways. As London sleeps outside her window, Cindy prepares for the next meeting. The seduction of trust has begun. One conversation, one shared laugh at a time, leading inexorably to Rome and the end of Mordechai Vanunu's freedom. Would you like me to continue with Part 2? 32 Sources Part 2. September 28, 1986, Trafalgar Square, London. The pigeons scatter in a gray flurry as Cheryl and Vanunu walk the perimeter of the square, the National Gallery looming behind them like a silent witness. The rain has stopped, leaving the air fresh and the stone steps glistening. Cheryl, Cindy to him, laughs easily at his stories of growing up in Beersheba, the son of Moroccan immigrants, his sharp mind always clashing with authority. She mirrors his energy, sharing invented tales of her rebellious college days in Florida, the ex-boyfriend who never understood her wanderlust. Every detail is crafted to resonate, the sense of not quite fitting in, the hunger for something meaningful beyond routine. They sit on a bench overlooking the fountains, sharing a paper bag of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor. Vanunu opens up more, his guard lowering with each passing hour. He speaks of his work at Dimona, the nuclear research center in the Negev, without naming it directly yet, hinting at ethical dilemmas, the burden of secrets in a country always on edge. Cheryl leans in, eyes wide with feigned fascination, asking gentle questions that nudge without pushing. Sounds intense, she says softly. Must be hard carrying all that alone. The words land perfectly. His shoulders relax, and he admits to feeling isolated since leaving Israel, the weight of what he knows pressing heavier each day. By late afternoon, they wander into a small pub off Charing Cross Road. Over pints of bitter, the conversation deepens. Vanunu confides his growing disillusionment, the opacity of Israel's policies, the fear that unchecked power could lead to catastrophe. Cheryl nods sympathetically, sharing fabricated anecdotes of American whistleblowers she admires, planting the idea that speaking out is brave, necessary. She never pressures. Instead, she becomes the confidant he's been craving, the pretty stranger who listens without judgment. As evening falls and the pub lights glow warm against the windows, Vanunu suggests dinner. She agrees, and they find a quiet Italian place in Soho, red checkered tablecloths, candlelight flickering in Chianti bottles. Over pasta and wine, he finally crosses the line, voice lowered. He's spoken to journalists, provided evidence of Israel's nuclear arsenal. The Sunday Times is preparing a story that could change everything. Cheryl's heart races beneath her calm exterior. This is the confirmation Mossad needs, but she responds with wide-eyed concern. That's huge, Mordechai. Are you safe? People in power don't like secrets getting out. He shrugs, a mix of defiance and vulnerability. I had to do it for the world to know. She reaches across the table, touches his hand briefly. You're brave. But yeah, be careful. The touch lingers just long enough, the eye contact warm and lingering. By the time they part outside her hotel, the connection is electric. He asks to see her tomorrow, perhaps a day trip to Brighton. She smiles, says yes, and watches him walk away into the night, his step lighter. In her room, door locked, Cheryl transmits the breakthrough. Target fully engaged, disclosures confirmed, emotional attachment forming. Tel Aviv's response is swift. Accelerate, invite to roam, neutral ground, extraction feasible. The next days blur into a carefully choreographed romance, strolls along the Thames, visits to the British Museum where Vanunu lectures her on ancient history with boyish enthusiasm. Cheryl plays the captivated student, laughing at his jokes, sharing personal stories that mirror his insecurities. She introduces small intimacies, brushing lint from his jacket, linking arms in the chill, building the trust layer by layer. Vanunu, starved for companionship after months in hiding, falls hard. He speaks openly now of the photographs smuggled out, the interviews taped, the October publication looming. October 2nd brings the pivot. Over dinner at a quiet bistro, Cheryl sighs dramatically. I have to head to Rome next week. Sister's wedding, family stuff. Hate to cut this short. Vanunu's face falls. The connection has become his anchor in London's anonymity. She pauses, then adds casually, You could come? See Italy, get away from all this stress. My treat, I've got the hotel booked already. He hesitates, weighing the risks, but her eyes, hopeful, inviting, tip the scale. Why not? He says finally, grinning. A little adventure. The hook is set deep. Cheryl transmits confirmation that night. Target accepts Rome invitation, departure October 5th. Extraction team mobilizing. But in the quiet after the message sends, doubt flickers. Vanunu is no monster, just a man with a conscience believing he's preventing disaster. Using his loneliness, his attraction to her, feels like wielding a blade wrapped in silk. The human cost mounts, the betrayal he'll feel when the trap springs, the years in isolation he'll face. Cheryl stares at her reflection, the pretty face that's become a weapon, and wonders how many more layers of herself she'll shed before the mission ends. As London fades into plans for Rome, the trust she's cultivated becomes the deadliest chain, pulling Vanunu inexorably toward his fate. October 5th, 1986. Heathrow Airport, London. The departure hall buzzes with the usual Sunday chaos. Families hugging goodbye, businessmen rushing to gates, the metallic voice of announcements echoing overhead. Cheryl stands at the Alitalia check-in counter, her carry-on bag light and unremarkable, a bright smile fixed as she chats with the clerk about the weather in Rome. Vanunu arrives moments later, slightly disheveled from the tube ride, clutching his ticket and passport with a mix of excitement and nerves. He spots her immediately, his face lighting up in a way that twists something inside her chest. "Cindy!" he calls, weaving through the crowd. She turns, feigns delighted surprise, and hugs him briefly, the kind of embrace that feels natural to onlookers but calculated in its warmth. "You made it," she says, voice bubbly. "This is going to be amazing." He nods, grinning, the loneliness of his exile momentarily forgotten in the promise of her company. They board the flight together, seats side by side in economy. As the plane climbs over the English countryside, Vanunu relaxes into the journey, pointing out landmarks below, sharing more about his life, the philosophy books he's reading, his dreams of a world without nuclear threats. Cheryl listens, head tilted attentively, asking questions that keep him talking. She offers snacks from her bag, touches his arm when laughing at his stories. The flight attendants smile at the young couple, oblivious to the script unfolding. Touching down in Rome's Fiumicino airport feels like crossing an invisible threshold. Neutral ground. No British protections here. Italian authorities less likely to interfere. Cheryl's pulse quickens beneath her calm exterior as they collect luggage and hail a taxi to the city center. She's booked a modest hotel in Trastevere under her cover name, romantic enough without extravagance. A double room, as suggested in London. Vanunu hesitates at the desk, but her playful insistence, "Come on, we're adults, it'll be fun," wins him over. The room overlooks a cobblestone alley, sunlight streaming through wooden shutters. They drop their bags and Cheryl suggests exploring immediately, St. Peter's, the Colosseum, gelato in the afternoon heat. Vanunu agrees eagerly, the change of scenery lifting his spirits. They wander hand in hand through the eternal city, her arm linked in his, posing for photos like any tourists. At the Trevi fountain, she tosses a coin over her shoulder, winking at him. For good luck. He does the same, his wish unspoken but clear in his eyes. Dinner that evening is at a trattoria near the Pantheon. Pasta carbonara, house red, candlelight flickering on ancient walls. Vanunu grows animated, wine loosening his tongue further. He speaks of the impending Sunday Times article, the evidence he's provided, the hope that exposure will force disarmament. Cheryl nods thoughtfully, expressing admiration for his courage while gently probing for details, timelines, contacts. The trust is absolute now. He sees her as ally, confidant, perhaps more. Back at the hotel, the intimacy escalates. In the room, with the city sounds muffled below, he kisses her. Tentative at first, then deeper. Cheryl responds, guiding without rushing, the line she's drawn in training holding firm but tested. It's enough to seal the bond, to make him feel desired, safe. As he falls asleep beside her, content in the afterglow, she lies awake staring at the ceiling frescoes, the weight of tomorrow pressing heavy. October 6th dawns bright. They spend the morning at the Vatican museums, Vanunu marveling at the Sistine Chapel, while Cheryl texts subtle updates via a hidden pager. Target compliant, location confirmed. Lunch is light, a picnic in the Borghese Gardens. Afternoon plans shift when she suggests a quiet evening in. Jet lag catching up, maybe room service? He agrees, no suspicion in his eyes. By evening, as the sun sets over Rome's rooftops, Vanunu showers while Cheryl prepares drinks from the minibar. The knock comes precisely on schedule, room service but not. 3 Mossad operatives burst in, swift and silent, chloroform rag over his mouth, restraints applied in seconds. Vanunu's eyes widen in shock, locking on Cheryl's face as betrayal dawns. No words, just the muffled struggle, then stillness. Cheryl steps back, voice steady as she confirms to the team. Package secure. They bundle him into a crate disguised as diplomatic luggage, wheeling it out to a waiting van. Italian authorities, tipped anonymously about a drunk tourist, look the other way. As the van speeds toward the coast and an awaiting ship to Israel, Cheryl remains in the room, stripping it of traces. The trust she built, nights of laughter, shared secrets, feigned affection, has delivered him into captivity. Vanunu will face trial for treason, decades in solitary. Alone now, she sits on the bed, the silence deafening. The human cost crashes in, the look in his eyes at the end, the intimacy turned weapon. She transmits final confirmation, then destroys the pager. Rome's bells toll outside as Cheryl Hanan, Cindy no more, prepares to vanish, another shadow in Mossad's long war for survival. Would you like me to continue with Part 4? Part 4. October 7th, 1986. Mediterranean Sea, off the coast of Italy. The yacht cuts through the dark waves under a moonless sky. Its engines a low thrum as it races toward international waters. Cheryl stands on the deck, wind whipping her hair, the salt spray stinging her face like a reminder of what she's done. Below, in the hold, Mordechai Vanunu lies sedated and bound, the crate sealed and labeled as medical equipment. The extraction team, 6 operatives, faces hardened from years in the shadows, moves efficiently, checking restraints, monitoring vitals. No one speaks to her beyond necessities. The air is thick with the finality of success. Rome fades behind them, the eternal city's lights swallowed by the horizon. Cheryl replays the moment endlessly. The knock, the rush, Vanunu's eyes locking on hers in that split second of realization. Betrayal raw and absolute. He hadn't fought much. The chloroform worked fast. But the look lingered, a silent accusation that cuts deeper than any struggle. She grips the railing, knuckles white, the adrenaline crash leaving her hollow. The team leader, a veteran named Avi with a scar across his cheek from Entebbe, approaches quietly. "Clean operation," he says, voice low. "You did good." She nods, but the words ring empty. Good. Building trust over weeks, sharing meals, laughter, touches, only to deliver him into a cage. Vanunu will face trial in Israel, charged with treason and espionage. Decades in prison, most in solitary, for exposing what the state insists must remain hidden. As the yacht clears Italian waters, the radio crackles with confirmation from Tel Aviv. Diplomatic channels quiet, no immediate pursuit. The handover to an Israeli naval vessel is seamless, Vanunu transferred under cover of darkness, the yacht turning back for a European port. Cheryl stays aboard the naval ship, assigned a small cabin for the journey home. Sleep evades her. She sits by the porthole, watching the sea churn black. The human cost settles like lead. Vanunu wasn't a terrorist or assassin, just a man with convictions, believing transparency could prevent catastrophe. His leaks threatened Israel's core survival strategy: nuclear opacity, the unspoken arsenal deterring enemies who outnumber and outgun the tiny nation. In the post-Holocaust world, where threats from Iran to Iraq loom eternal, ambiguity is armor. Cheryl understands the necessity, has lived it since her Aliyah, the pride in a Jewish state strong enough to defend itself. But wielding trust as the lure, watching it shatter in his eyes leaves scars no training prepares for. October 10th brings landfall at a discreet Israeli port near Ashdod. Vanunu is whisked away in a secure convoy to Ashkelon prison, his arrival kept secret to avoid media storms. Cheryl debriefs in a Tel Aviv safe house, recounting every interaction, every disclosure. Handlers praise the precision. No violence, no diplomatic fallout. The whistleblower silenced before the story fully breaks. The Sunday Times publishes on October 5th anyway. Vanunu's photos and testimony splashed across front pages, confirming Israel's arsenal of 100 to 200 warheads. Global outrage follows, calls for sanctions, protests outside embassies. But the kidnap blunts the impact. Vanunu discredited as unreliable, the focus shifting to the dramatic capture. Cheryl requests leave, granted without question. She returns to her husband, a fellow intelligence officer who understands the silence that follows missions. But the intimacy with Vanunu haunts her. The feigned affection turned real enough to work. Nights bring fragments, his laugh over coffee, the vulnerability in Rome, the betrayal in his gaze. Years pass. Vanunu's trial in 1987, closed door, conviction swift, sentences him to 18 years, 11 in solitary. Released in 2004 under restrictions, he remains a controversial figure, unrepentant but broken. Cheryl, her role classified forever, fades into private life. The honeytrap that saved Israel's greatest secret etched in Mossad annals as a textbook success. Yet success tastes of ash. Trust, the deadliest weapon, cuts the wielder deepest. In quiet moments, Cheryl wonders about the man she lured, the conversations that weren't all lies, the connection that felt momentarily genuine, the cost of survival, pieces of the soul traded for the nation's shield. As Israel navigates new threats in the decades ahead, operatives like her carry the burden unseen, their victories silent, their scars eternal. October 11th, 1986, Tel Aviv, Israel. The safe house is a nondescript apartment in the northern suburbs, windows shuttered against prying eyes, the air thick with the scent of strong coffee and cigarette smoke from the debriefing team. Cheryl sits at a plain wooden table, her hands wrapped around a glass of water she hasn't touched. The handlers, 2 men and a woman from Mossad's psychological support unit, ask questions gently, probing for operational details, emotional state, any signs of compromise. She answers mechanically. The timeline of contact, the conversations in London and Rome, the moment of extraction. They nod, take notes, praise the flawless execution. Vanunu is already in custody, the Sunday Times story diluted by his disappearance and subsequent confession under interrogation. But the praise feels distant. Cheryl excuses herself to the small balcony, lighting a cigarette with fingers that finally tremble. Below, the city hums with ordinary life, families walking to synagogue, children playing soccer in the street. The contrast jars her. She's home, mission accomplished, Israel's nuclear deterrent preserved. The world rages over the revelations, but the kidnap shifts focus. Vanunu painted as unstable, the evidence questioned. Diplomatic fallout contained. No war triggered, no sanctions crippling the economy. Yet victory rings hollow. The trust she manufactured, the affection she simulated, lingers like a stain. Vanunu's face in that final second, the dawning horror, the plea in his eyes, replays endlessly. He believed in her, opened his soul because she made him feel seen, desired. The weapon worked perfectly because part of it became real. The conversations about ethics, peace, the shared moments of vulnerability that weren't entirely feigned. Cheryl exhales smoke into the night air, wondering how much of Cindy died in that Rome hotel room. The trial comes swiftly, behind closed doors in early 1987. Vanunu, isolated and broken by months of interrogation, is convicted on treason charges. 18 years, 11 in solitary confinement, a sentence designed to silence forever. Cheryl testifies anonymously via video link, her face obscured, voice distorted. She recounts the seduction, the lure to Rome, without emotion. The judges nod gravely. The state prevails. Years roll forward. Cheryl requests transfer from field operations. Approved quietly, no questions. She works analysis desks, then training new recruits, teaching the art of human intelligence without ever mentioning Rome. Her marriage endures, strengthened by shared understanding, but intimacy carries new shadows. Children come, 2 daughters, who know nothing of their mother's past beyond vague stories of government work. Vanunu's release in 2004, after serving every day, brings the story back into headlines. Restricted from speaking to foreigners, monitored constantly, he remains defiant but diminished. Cheryl watches news clips from afar, the man she once knew aged beyond recognition, eyes still carrying that accusation. She never reaches out, never seeks forgiveness. Some debts can't be paid. In later years, as Israel's nuclear program evolves, submarines, second strike capabilities, the ambiguity holds. Threats from Iran intensify, but the deterrent works. Cheryl retires quietly in the 2000s, settling in a small coastal town, tending a garden, reading philosophy books that echo Vanunu's old passions. The operation is taught in Mossad classrooms as a model honeytrap. Flawless, bloodless, decisive. But in private moments, watching sunsets over the Mediterranean, Cheryl carries the unspoken truth. Trust, the deadliest weapon, leaves no visible wounds, only the quiet erosion of those who wield it. She saved her nation from exposure, preserved the shield that keeps enemies at bay. Yet part of her soul remains in that Rome hotel room, trapped forever in the moment a man's faith in humanity shattered. The women of Mossad continue their work, unseen architects of survival, paying prices no metal acknowledges. In a world where secrets are currency and trust the sharpest blade, they endure, ghosts in service of a light that must never go out.